The menglong mystery. FBI uncovers China's billion-dollar dark money trail. At 3:17 a.m., the lights in a quiet Washington, D.C. federal building flickered, not from a power outage, but from the sudden awakening of a file long buried beneath layers of diplomatic silence. On the screen glowed a name written in stark white letters against a black background. Menglong. For years, it had floated through encrypted cables, offshore ledgers, and whispered conversations between men who never left fingerprints. Now, it had reached the desk of an FBI financial crimes task force that specialized in one thing only: money that was never supposed to be found. This was not the story the public thought they knew. This was something far darker. A name that shouldn't have appeared. Menglong. Celebrated, admired, and seemingly untouchable. On the surface, his name belonged to cinema screens, fan banners, and polished interviews. But deep inside a sea-server farm in Eastern Europe, investigators found something chilling: the same name embedded inside a web of shell companies, numbered trusts, and encrypted transfers totaling over $1 billion. At first, analysts assumed it was coincidence. Identity overlap was common in financial crimes. But the timestamps told a different story. The transfers spiked during critical political and commercial moments. The money moved like a living thing, slipping from Macau to Zurich, from Singapore to the Cayman Islands, before vanishing into private equity funds that never reported profits. This wasn't laundering. This was orchestration. The dark money architecture. The FBI task force, codenamed Black Mirror, mapped the network over 6 months. What emerged was a structure so elegant it was terrifying. At the center sat a constellation of entertainment conglomerates, cultural export firms, and talent investment vehicles. On paper, they funded movies, streaming projects, and international promotions. In reality, they served as financial camouflage, masking capital transfers linked to resource deals, surveillance tech, and political influence campaigns across 3 continents. The brilliance of the system was its shield: fame. Who would suspect that the glow of celebrity could function as a financial firewall? The night the trail broke open, the breakthrough came not from money, but from fear. A whistleblower, known only as Source K, contacted U.S. authorities from a safe house in Lisbon. His message was short: "You're not following the actor. You're following the symbol." Attached was a ledger fragment, partial, corrupted, but enough. It showed a revenue stream labeled YML Cultural Flow, routing funds through offshore entities during global promotional tours. Tour dates matched transfer dates. Premiere nights matched asset purchases. Applause masked acquisition. When analysts overlaid satellite data, they noticed something else. During these transfers, private jets associated with financial intermediaries landed in cities Menglong publicly visited. Coincidence ended there. Behind the curtain of soft power, investigators began to understand the real game. The network wasn't about one man, it was about what his image enabled. Cultural icons open doors politicians can't. Red carpets lead to boardrooms. Fan meetings disguise closed-door negotiations. In this shadow economy, influence was currency and popularity was collateral. Billions flowed not as bribes but as co-productions, distribution rights, and brand partnerships. Each contract perfectly legal on the surface. Each one hollow at its core. This wasn't corruption in the traditional sense. It was postmodern financial warfare. Why the FBI got involved? So, why the FBI? Because the money didn't stay overseas. A portion of the funds re-entered the U.S. through venture capital firms investing in AI, data analytics, and media platforms. The concern wasn't celebrity scandal, it was national security. According to internal briefings, analysts feared a scenario where cultural influence merged with financial leverage, quietly shaping narratives, markets, and even elections without firing a single shot. One agent reportedly said, "This isn't about fame. This is about control." The silence that spoke loudest. As rumors of an international probe leaked, something strange happened. Menglong vanished from the public eye. No statements. No denials. No social media posts. Projects were delayed. Interviews canceled. Brand partners quietly removed his image from campaigns without explanation. In Beijing, Hong Kong, and Los Angeles, lawyers met behind closed doors. Silence became the loudest signal of all. $1 billion, nowhere to land. By the time authorities froze the first set of accounts, over $380 million had already evaporated into digital fog, converted into crypto assets split across thousands of wallets. But freezing money was never the end goal. The real objective was exposure. Once the system was visible, it could never be unseen. The final file. In a classified report marked Eyes Only, the FBI concluded. The network operated for over 9 years. Used celebrity-driven cultural exports as financial cover. Laundered and repositioned over $1.2 billion. Involved intermediaries across 12 countries. Relied on public figures as symbolic shields, not necessarily architects. And at the center of public perception, whether knowingly or not, stood the name that unlocked it all. Menglong. Mystery without resolution. To this day, no charges have been publicly filed. No courtroom drama. No televised confession. Just a question hanging in the air. Was Menglong a mastermind, a pawn, or merely a mask worn by a system too vast to confront directly? In the age of spectacle, truth doesn't always arrive with handcuffs. Sometimes it arrives as absence, as canceled appearances, as a name slowly erased from billboards. And somewhere in Washington, a file remains open, not because the story is over, but because the real ending may be too dangerous to tell. When the money started talking back, the first freeze didn't make headlines, but inside financial intelligence circles, it landed like a gunshot in a cathedral. At 6:42 a.m. Geneva time, 3 private accounts linked to a cultural investment fund rejected an incoming transfer worth $47 million. No error code. No explanation. Just silence. Within minutes, similar failures echoed across Singapore, Dubai, and Vancouver. The dark money trail had hit something it could not pass through. And whoever built the system knew it. The panic phase. Inside a penthouse overlooking Victoria Harbor, phones rang unanswered. Assistants were told to wait. Lawyers spoke in fragments, never finishing a sentence. Documents were shredded not because they were incriminating, but because they were too revealing when viewed together. The architecture that once looked elegant now resembled a trap. For years, the network had relied on motion. Money in constant movement left no fingerprints. But when the FBI task force forced stillness, patterns emerged, repetitions, signatures, habits. And habits are how systems betray themselves. The symbol becomes a liability. Menglong's name, once the perfect shield, became radioactive. What investigators had long suspected now crystallized. The system had overused the symbol. His presence appeared too often at critical junctions, film festivals aligned with capital transfers, charity galas coinciding with asset reallocations, overseas shoots synchronized with high-risk negotiations. What once felt invisible now looked careless. An analyst in Black Mirror reportedly said, "They forgot the rule of myth-making. If you show the god too often, people start asking where the thunder comes from." A scene no one was meant to see. The most disturbing discovery came from an unexpected source. Raw footage never aired. Pulled from a seized editing server, the clip showed a private reception after an international premiere. Crystal glasses. Soft laughter. Famous faces. But in the background, barely visible, men exchange envelopes, phones, and USB drives. No smiles. No applause. Just transactions happening in the shadow of celebration. When enhanced, a whispered phrase surfaced in Mandarin. "This one moves after Menglong leaves." That sentence alone triggered a 120-page analytical memo. The collapse of the middlemen. As pressure increased, intermediaries began to crack. One Hong Kong-based financier fled to Buenos Aires. A Singaporean consultant disappeared mid-flight, never clearing immigration records. Shell companies dissolved themselves overnight, their directors resigning within minutes of each other as if responding to a silent alarm. The system wasn't collapsing randomly. It was being dismantled from the inside. Because someone, somewhere, had decided survival mattered more than loyalty. What the money was really for. By this stage, investigators no longer asked how the money moved, but why. The answer was colder than corruption. The funds weren't meant to enrich individuals. They were meant to position influence, to buy time, access, and silence. Stakes in media platforms. Quiet investments in data pipelines. Cultural dominance wrapped in entertainment. This wasn't a crime of greed. It was a crime of long-term design. And fame was the Trojan horse. Menglong's final disappearance. Then came the moment that unsettled even veteran agents. Menglong's digital footprint stopped updating, not publicly, but internally. Travel records stalled. Credit activity went dormant. Third-party logins ceased. Not a disappearance in the dramatic sense. A strategic erasure. One intelligence officer summarized it bluntly. You don't erase someone unless their continued existence creates risk. Whether menglong chose the silence, or had it chosen for him, remained unanswered. The file that refused to close. As governments quietly coordinated and assets continued to freeze, the FBI prepared what insiders called the exposure option, a controlled release of findings designed not to prosecute, but to neutralize. Because arresting a system like this would destabilize too much. But exposing it? That would make it unusable. The final internal note read, "Once the illusion breaks, the money loses its camouflage." A mystery that became a warning. The menglong mystery was no longer about one name. It became a case study whispered in intelligence briefings, a reminder that in the modern world, power doesn't always wear uniforms or sit in parliament. Sometimes it smiles on screen. Sometimes it bows at premieres. Sometimes it lets the world adore it, while money moves quietly behind the curtain. And somewhere, deep in a secured vault, a billion-dollar trail still flickers on a screen, unfinished. Not because justice failed, but because the truth arrived exactly where it was most dangerous.